Hey Dale, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate you coming on.
Good to
So,
be here. Thanks, Josh.
yeah, awesome, man. So, a couple questions for you. I know we just did the event. So, what did you like about the event, and what was kind of your favorite part so far?
Sure. A couple things I really liked about the event. I really appreciated what I would say was the density of the content presented from start to finish. I chuckled when I saw the agenda and the overview slides or whatever when we were getting started, and thought to myself, how in the world are we ever going to make it through all of that content? And we made it through a surprising quantity of it. And as dense as it was, I felt like I had to hang on and take notes and never look away the entire time, which was awesome. As far as my favorite part of the event, um, it was the content was great. It was also, I think, special to have as many Acquira team members in the room as there were to speak to the variety of questions and things that came up. There was always somebody with relevant expertise other than Hayden, for example, that was there to provide at least a second or third voice and be responsive. So that was really good.
Awesome. That's really cool to hear. So, you were obviously looking at a few different things out there, and you decided not to do this on your own. But what made you decide to choose Acquira ultimately instead of the others, or doing it on your own?
Yeah, I think the biggest competitive analysis on this was doing it myself. And because I have, background in finance and I've owned and operated three different organizations myself, the idea of hiring someone to teach me what I don't know to do acquisitions was something that I for a while thought I knew more than I did in this space. And so it really was a personal transformation journey. My own ego was in the way. And eventually when I started looking at I was dripped on by the marketing sequence for, some extended period of time, and just it was consistent. Every single piece of content that landed in my inbox was, again, content dense and no fluff. And eventually I recognized that, there was some real substance in what was being presented that represented all kinds of things that I had gaps in personally. And sure, I believe in myself and can figure it out. But man, that's been hard to do at times. And so, at some point or another, I switched and I said, "Wait, I want to work with someone that's competent and that's been there and was willing to meet me where I'm at and that I like." I didn't do a lot of additional evaluations. I know there are, a few kind of competitive resources that exist in the marketplace. I didn't go do thorough, you know, versus comparisons, which is kind of unusual for me. Often I would, and in this case, I'm kind of glad I didn't. I just said, "Let's go," and I'm gonna maximize the value. I take responsibility for, my own experience in that.
Got it. So yeah, a big part of it though is probably just like the trust of, seeing the content and it being, really evident that it was substantive. It had substance to it. So that
Yep.
makes kind of sense. So how would you describe the Acquira, community and support system in place?
hmm It's an interesting community, Josh. I've thoroughly enjoyed, making friends with various members in the community, not necessarily the Acquire team, but just the other prospective acquisition entrepreneurs and people that are, going down the journey. There's some really incredibly bright people that have, chosen to make this their home for a time, and so it's been incredible. I'm just thinking about people that I met in person at the event specifically. People that work in one gentleman works at Apple, and I learned so much about how they manage information in their inside their organization and the tools they use to do that. It's a completely different way of thinking, and so I got to see kind of how he was arranging his own acquisition entrepreneurial journey using some of those practices. And it was so good that we followed up later and I asked him a bunch of hard questions about that so I could glean some because I don't have any experience with that. That's just one example. I could go on. So great community and also the Acquire team themselves. You know, when we sign up for the accelerator, there's kind of like, oh, this is what to expect, and this is what's included, and this is what you should, this is what will happen, and this is, and even then, ultimately, once signed up, this is who you talk to for this, and you're going to get, X number of calls with so and so for this purpose, and yada yada. But the fact is, everyone makes themselves extremely accessible, and I have yet to bump into any kind of actual limit on accessibility. Like, we're here to make you successful, Dale. What do you need is the ethos. So that's been my experience with the community.
Awesome. That's good to hear. And yeah, it just shows the quality of the people you're with really affects your experience for sure. Um,
Mhm.
so, what hesitations did you have, if any, about working with us?
Yeah, as already kind of alluded, my hesitation was in my head. It really wasn't a hesitation about should I work with Acquira or not. Do I have what I need without help? And then at some point deciding that I didn't have all the answers and that I did have something that I could learn. Then it just simply became, do I want to work with these people? And after, the relationship being established, the trust being established through content marketing for extended periods of time and watching it grow and evolve. I mean, Acquire hasn't been around forever either. And so it has gotten better. The content and even the fit and finish of the content has gotten better. And I watch that. I see that evolution. And at some point, that trust coefficient, combining competence and all of the things that go into that kind of triggered. And I said, oh, these are 100% legitimate folks, and I want to work with them. So again, like I said, I didn't really evaluate others. I didn't make a set of comparatives and consider it that way. It was more just in my own mind. There became a moment when I said, I want to be a partner, not, a rogue individualist. It's time to partner.
Got it. Makes a ton of sense. So, I guess last question I would ask you is, if someone was on the fence about working with Acquira, what would you say to that person?
So I'd certainly ask some questions about what on the fence looked like for them because there could be a lot of different reasons. They may be comparing other competitives that compared to, competitors. I would just simply offer them the experience that I've had, which has been only positive and, very, very real. There's like, there's content marketing that occurs in any given marketplace, and it's based on quote influencers on social media, or it's based on what it sounds like as opposed to what it is like. And I guess my BS meter on some of that's pretty finely tuned at this point in life, and I just cannot tolerate that kind of fluff. And I want to work with people that represent real substance. And so I would say maybe there are competitors, maybe there are alternatives that are similarly positioned in the marketplace with real substance. There may be. My experience was that Acquire is that. And so if that's a good fit for you and you recognize that you need a partner to, work together with and move you faster through a process that you could probably figure out on your own, it may take longer and it may be more painful. If you are at that point and you recognize that need, it seems like Acquire is at least one of the very, very best solutions. So that'd be my advice.
Awesome. Well, Dale, I really appreciate you sharing your experience and looking forward to continuing to follow your journey.
Yeah, appreciate it, Josh. Thanks.